Let mutual love continue. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing that, some have entertained angels without knowing it. In the name of the one holy and living God. Amen. While I was on retreat last month in Ireland, I met a fellow retreatant whose name was Sean. Imagine that. Sean is an Irishman from Dublin. If you look up Blarney in the dictionary, you will find a picture of Sean. The man has the gift for gab. The retreat center was way out in the country. One morning, I decided to take the bus into Sligo, which is the nearest town, to do some errands. Mind you, the bus stop was a mile walk away on the side of the road across from the local cemetery. Guess who happened to be at the bus stop? Sean, holding forth with two somewhat bewildered-looking gentlemen. I inquired as to whether I was at the right spot for the bus, and being reassured that I was, I stepped aside and waited. When the bus arrived, I discovered that the two men chatting with Sean hadn't even been waiting for the bus. They had just been shanghaied by Sean as they were walking by and pulled into his conversation. And without missing a beat, Sean recognized me from the retreat center and continued the conversation as we got on the bus and found a seat. When he learned that I was an Anglican priest from the United States, which was among the few words that I uttered during the next 30 minutes, there was no stopping him. I'll get to the stops next week. But he did share one story that stuck in my mind. Sean was a regular member of his local Roman Catholic parish, but he also occasionally worshiped at the nearby Church of Ireland congregation, which is the equivalent of the Episcopal Church in Ireland. He allowed that the worship there was not all that much different. But what really blew his mind the first time he attended was the practice of coffee hour afterwards and the warm personal welcome that he received. So the next Sunday, after that first visit with the Anglicans, he went back to his local Catholic parish. And after Mass, he stopped at the entrance of the church to greet the pastor. He said to him, "Father, when I go to the Anglican church, they give me coffee, tea, and biscuits after Mass. What are you going to do for me?" For Sean, the Anglicans had raised the bar for hospitality. I'd love to know what that poor Catholic priest replied, but Sean never mentioned it. Sean wasn't talking Blarney when he recognized the importance of hospitality, especially hospitality to strangers. It was a virtue that he himself practiced, even if it was a little bit overwhelming. While generalizations about an entire nation of people should be taken with a grain of salt, being welcoming to strangers seemed to be characteristic of the Irish people. I was warmly welcomed wherever I went. One of our members here at St. James, Blake Hallinan, describes the Irish as a nation of Doreen Cantons, a beloved former member of St. James who recently moved back to Ireland and who offered me wonderful hospitality while I was there as well. A nation of Doreen Cantons is a foretaste of heaven. And a foretaste of heaven is what the writer of the letter to the Hebrews encourages the church to be. The chief mark of such a community is the practice of mutual love, extending beyond the circle of the familiar to include hospitality to strangers. In the ancient world, welcoming strangers could mean the difference between life and death for wayfarers traveling at a time when to do so was exhausting and often quite dangerous. To share hospitality with a stranger was also a recognition of shared humanity, and even if only temporarily, familial obligation. The practice of hospitality is a spiritual discipline whereby we expand the circle of mutual love and experience a foretaste of God's realm on earth as it is in heaven. Those of us who live in the bubble of relative affluence and security may find it difficult to identify with hospitality as a matter of life and death. We just think of it as being nice. But for many travelers, even today, it is just that important. I think especially here of migrants and refugees, strangers who travel often under very dangerous conditions, from places of violence, economic dislocation, and climate disaster. We are living through the largest event of human migration that the planet has ever experienced. Climate change is increasing its scope and its effect. The practice of hospitality is indeed a matter of life and death for millions of people. The issue of hospitality is now a global concern. In Ireland, there was much discussion about the reception of 40,000 refugees from the Ukraine due to the terrible war there. That may not sound like much given the 6 million refugees created by that war. But it is a significant commitment for a nation of 5 million people. Here in the United States, we've welcomed more than 150,000 Ukrainian refugees, but we are a nation of more than 332 million people, with a landmass that is more than 13,000% larger than the Republic of Ireland. The Irish are indeed a people of hospitality. In his teaching about banquet etiquette, Jesus is not doling out polite advice like some kind of first century mismanners. He is describing what God's realm on earth looks like. It is a party in which people don't compete for status or honors, having to push their way to the top. In fact, the guest list includes the poor, the handicapped, the lame, and the blind. Mutual love is not about strict reciprocity, a transactional tit for tat. It is about giving ourselves away in love, regardless of repayment, trusting that the act of hospitality is itself its own reward with eternal consequences. No act of hospitality, however large or small, is ever wasted. And the feast is for everyone. In welcoming strangers to God's communion table and the coffee hour table, we enact a practice of hospitality that is meant to shape our response to the strangers we meet in daily life. Hospitality is a communal practice, a shared responsibility. Strangers are mirrors who reveal to us a great deal about ourselves, our character, and our faith as a people. To receive them is a blessing and its own reward. It is an anticipation of resurrection life. For many years now, members of our Faith in Action team have volunteered monthly with Project Homeless Connect, providing hospitality to our unhoused neighbors. Others have been accompanying asylum seekers as part of the interfaith movement for human integrity, appearing at court hearings, writing letters, and sometimes providing financial support. More recently, some members of our community have begun to explore what is involved in sponsoring a refugee family. I invite you to consider what you are doing, however large or small, to offer hospitality to those who may feel unwelcome. And perhaps consider how you might volunteer to help with some of the hospitality ministries in the wider community that are already underway here at St. James. And we can always use volunteers for coffee hour. Strangers can be angels, delivering divine messages if we are willing to listen. In the name of the one holy and living God. Amen.